I've never asked you this before, but I'm going to ask it anyway since it is germane. What'd you think of what Dana White had to say about bringing Brady and Gronk to Las Vegas? What'd you think of that? You heard that one before?
I honestly think, Rich, like this is a story that's never going to die. Like the story of how Tom Brady left New England, the story of who was out there for him, the story of the teams that liked him, the teams that didn't think that he had much left. Like this thing has like legs. Like we're still talking about it 2.5 years later. You know what I mean? Like so, I feel like we're going to get drips and drabs of Tom Brady's like clandestine free agent adventure. And I think we're probably going to get drips and drabs of what happened a few months ago, too, you know, over the next few years because the public, all of us, too, like I'm not just saying the fans, like us, too, can't get enough of, like, the drama here. You know what I mean? So, I mean, so much of this was trying to figure out what was the term that Brady used on LeBron's show?
The MFer.
Yes,
and so, but Dana White basically said it's Derek Carr, and Gronk confirmed it. I mean, Gronk's sitting there saying, "You just said it. You told the truth." And you know, I'm thrilled that it didn't work out. That we went to Tampa, and how wild would it be if Brady wins twice in Tampa? The first year he wins after it was Plan B after going to Vegas. And then the second time it would be after it's the Plan B because he was thinking of going to Miami. You know, I mean, that would be wild. But had you heard anything remotely close to that rumor of what Dana White said?
No. I mean, the Raiders were one of the teams that was in. Now, my understanding is at the end, the only two teams that were really in it were the Buccaneers
and the Chargers. Yeah, the Chargers.
But you did hear about teams that were on the periphery and they considered it and they kicked the tires and, the Colts, the Bears, the Raiders were in that group. The Raiders were one of those teams that had kicked tires on it. And I think the Raiders exiting that process, regardless of who said, like, let's not do this, right? I think it sort of illustrates, like, how at the time, like, how complicated it was bringing in Tom Brady. Because if you brought in Tom Brady, greatest quarterback of all time, like, you are going to have to, like, basically hand part of the operation over to him, operate on his timeline. So every plan that you had made for the few years previous was going to sort of be blown up and everything was going to be done for right now. And we've seen that come to life with the Bucs, right? Like that's the way that they've operated. And it's been 100% worth it. You get that one championship, It's always going to have been worth it, right? But like that was a complicated thing for a lot of teams where it was like, we're not just bringing in Tom Brady. Now we have to run the whole organization on his timeline. And that means like anything that we've built over the last 3 or 4 years, that means we're going to have to sort of blow that up and operate for right now. And to hell what happens to us 2 or 3 years from now. And, the bottom line is, I think back in 2020, in March of 2020, there were a lot of teams where even if it meant bringing Brady in, that was a bridge too far. And, based on the results we've seen in Tampa now, we can say there were probably more than a couple teams that made a mistake in that regard.
Yeah. Of course you do it. But so essentially, if this is all true, and again, Gronk confirmed it. I mean, he basically said that's what happened. So then Gruden didn't change his spots in the way that Arians was willing to do so. And Arians has got the ring, right? I mean, is that it? Pretty much?
I mean, that's what it sounds like to me. I mean, like, and look, like I think you got to give Bruce credit. Like, and I know like things maybe didn't end the way that everybody had hoped they would end and all that, but I mean, he was willing to do this. He was willing to say, and maybe part of it's his age, like he knew he didn't have very long left. Jason Light was willing to do it. Like, hey, like we're willing to operate on the timeline of one of our players, and we're willing to do things that might mortgage the future of our organization. The way they wrote contracts, Rich, like people haven't dug into this as much, completely changed when they brought in Tom Brady. It was, we're writing contracts way different than we have. And the way we used to do it, that was on principle, but now we're in a different circumstance. And so, I mean, like, I think like the willingness of a lot of people in the Bucs organization, primarily Bruce Arians, to do things a different way facilitated that, and they all have rings because of it. I mean, even down to that, famed, like whole golf outing, in the middle of the season where, more or less, like they turned the offense from Bruce Arians' offense into Tom Brady's offense. I think those guys deserve credit for having the flexibility and the humility to go through with something like that.